Study session. I'd like to call it to order and start with a roll call.
Alderperson Robinson.
Present.
Hertz.
Here.
Gilbert.
Present.
Swanson.
Here.
Parker. Poulos. Healy.
Here.
And Mayor Tomes.
Here. Thank you very much. Public comment. Anybody sign up? Nobody signed up for public comment. All right, we're going to start then the presentations. Mr. Jones, I think you're up first.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all. Appreciate your time and attention to some of the great work that's being done with Rock Island's West End revitalization. As you all can see, several members of my board and the West End Revitalization has chosen to join us this evening as they've been incredibly invested and interested in this work. And we'll have a couple of them come up to speak to the work as well during the presentation. But they did want me to make sure that you understood that they're incredibly appreciative of the support and the vision you have for this work moving forward.
Yuri,
Yes.
could you introduce your board members and those who are on the steering committee, please? So
Absolutely. Now, okay, yes, sure. So I can see everybody. My board chair, Michael Glanz, is here. Vice Chair, Amy Bland. Board members. Mr. James Jones is here. And then from on our board is Mr. Jesse Helen. In the back, we have Mr. Kai Swanson. And then from our steering committee, we have Miss Linda Sargent, Mr. Avery Pearl, and Ms. Marissa Cantu. Tila Shore as well.
thank you.
Yeah. So, why don't we go ahead and get started then? As I'll try not to do too much review because you all have been well versed on this and you received many memos from me. But as you well remember, the goal for West End Revitalization is to improve the livability, the wealth, the power in the West End of Rock Island, with a vision for the West End to be the preferred place to live and thrive. And in doing this work towards that goal and that vision, this group and the work moving forward embraces the values of justice, equity, inclusion, collaboration, empowerment, respect, communication, and one that's by itself but has turned out to be one of the very most important ones is trust. And you'll hear that through the theme through this presentation. We are doing this work, or moving towards those goals, utilizing 5 areas of impact that came from that community survey we did back in 2020 or 2021. And those areas of impact include civic capital, strengthening civic capital and community engagement in the West End, building the West End's residents' assets and incomes, increasing housing stability and quality with community control of land and housing, increase economic vitality of the West End, and improve the infrastructure and visual design of the West End. As I said before, these are broad, complex, nuanced, challenging goals to achieve or areas to try to affect. And I'll let you know that when these were all presented to the task force to prioritize these and even possibly just choose 1 or 2 of them, they instantly rebuffed that sort of idea, that it is not going to work very well if we don't address all these areas. We can't choose just one. And so we took that to heart. In order to address issues of such complex, such magnitude, such intricacy, and have grassroots involvement, we've chosen to utilize a collective impact model that allows for grassroots involvement, organization of groups cross-sector in this community amongst utilizing these guidelines and tools, including shared measurement, common vision, or common agenda, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a backbone organization that is the Martin Luther King Center. I realize I reviewed this model with you a few times, so I didn't want to go into too much detail unless there's questions about this model right now or later on in the presentation. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. We have formatted our collective impact model utilizing a steering committee, work groups, and the backbone support. The steering committee provides that strategic guidance to the work groups, and the work groups are formed among those 5 impact areas and a communication and events work group that cross-cuts all of these. because communication is vitally important in this work. And when I say communication, I want to really emphasize it's not information dissemination. It is a dialogue. It is a conversation to make sure that the work that's being done has the impact it's intended to have. The events that go along with it is an opportunity to share with the community in a way that's really accessible some of the successes or some of the challenges that we're facing. So that group will be working cross-cutting across these groups as well. To give you an idea, and Judith, Alderman Gilbert, you jumped the gun for me, but I appreciate that. We have our steering committee. Many of these members are here today. I've introduced, 3 of them or 4 of them? Who couldn't be with us today is Ms. Rita Jett and Ms. Vanessa Taylor. They're both out of town at this point in time, but they do appreciate the support and attention to this matter, to this work. And to give you an idea of the breadth and the faces and the relationships we're building in this work, here are some of the representatives that we have in our work groups. Now, the work that's being done probably encompasses over 50 people at this time. I couldn't put all those faces up here, but I wanted you to get an idea that these are people that you know, that I know, that are having real impact and having real input on this work. And so, let's move into where we're at today. And I invite Ms. Marissa Cantu to talk a little bit more about our goals and strategy and the process that they're engaged in creating a plan for February of '24.
Thank you, Jerry. And thank you, council members and mayor, for the opportunity to address you all today and to update you on our progress. As Jerry mentioned, we have some goals that we decided to tackle, and based on those areas of impact, these are the ones that are in front of you with community engagement, like he mentioned, assets and income, housing and land, environment, economic vitality, and infrastructure and visual appeal. And based on these areas of impact, we as a strategic committee got together and looked at all of the concerns and top priorities that we wanted to be able to address and condense them into the areas that you see listed. And the way that we wanted to be able to work on these is by creating working groups. Now we see this project as for the people and by the people, and all of the faces that were presented to you before this slide are all of the working group members that are invested in being able to support this process. And they've even gone to the commitment of meeting twice a month to be able to tackle these goals and strategies under these areas of impact. They're very dedicated to the work that we're doing. And the way that we selected the working group members is by just listing a lot of the persons that have leadership in our community already, that are already vested in our community, that have expertise in these different areas of impact, and that are very passionate about the work that they're currently doing. Something that we've talked about as a committee is that regardless of how much passion comes behind you, there has to be a way to put passion into policies and procedures. And with the talk of passion comes a certain realm of responsibility that we have to our community. And in providing goals and strategies in the way that becomes a little bit more measurable, achievable, relevant, and good timely skills and how it will come out with time is a way that we're able to move forward in presenting these goals and strategies. And that's how we felt that all of the members in our working groups were able to come together to bring their expertise, different ages, were able to cross-communicate in ways that enhance all of these levels of expertise that the people bring that are in these working groups. And so in doing that, we find that we have a very committed group that is working on this together with us. It's been a little over 10 months that we have gotten these areas of impacts and these goals and strategies, and we've been able to prioritize these areas to be able to find some both long-term wins and some quick wins as well. We're very excited about the work that we do, and like I said, a group of passionate people that can turn these things into policies and procedures. And I think that's about all that I have to share with you guys in this area. And again, we thank you so much for the time. We believe in the process. We believe in being able to put this together in a way that's going to come together for all of the community and all of us in here as well.
Good evening, everyone. I'm asking you all bear with me. I got a little voice loss right now, but I'm gonna do my best to speak clearly to you all. With our plan, not only is it a plan that is devised by passionate people, it's a plan that we've seen work in other areas. We recently met some of the people on our team with the Omaha Empowerment Network. This group has been able to revitalize North Omaha from a place that was ridden with disparities into one of Omaha's most desired places to live. They have done great things through this grassroots collective action type of work, which started with just 5 members and now has transformed into a community-wide initiative. And I'm gonna tell you guys a couple of the statistics that they've brought about in their own community. In North Omaha, they have increased household incomes on average from $34,170 to $39,434. They have reduced family poverty from 32% to 22%. They have reduced gun violence by as much as 74%. They are one of 4 organizations nationwide that have been chosen to be partnered with the Obama Foundation to help them with resource development and nationwide networking. They've served as the catalyst in Omaha to bring hundreds of millions of dollars in public and private redevelopment funds. And they've increased high school graduation rates from 64% to 80%. Now, this was done through nearly 15 years of continuous effort. But just 2 weeks ago, we met with the founder and CEO of this organization. He said to us that he believes in our plan. He believes in the work that we've already have done. We showed him everything that we've been doing, where we're at in the process, et cetera. And that he also wants to partner with us going forward to help ensure that we have the same change that they've been able to accomplish in North Omaha. Now, while we're still in the planning phase right now, like we said, our plan isn't expected to be done until next February. We're optimistic because we have seen the level of support that we get from the Omaha group with our project. They've already done the work. They've changed their community. They're working to do even more great things, and they're building affiliates nationwide to be able to replicate the work that they're doing. But then also the amount of commitment that I've seen from the professionals in our own community. We're meeting at least 3 times a month, 2 hours each time. These are people who have their own 9-to-5 jobs they work. They have their own businesses, their own nonprofits they run, families. They're busy people who are dedicating their time and energy to this project because they believe in the transformational change that can be done through collective action. I've seen people miss family events, you name it, and for this work. And alongside the Omaha work that I've seen done, with the commitment that I've seen from the community members, I know that we have the recipe for long-lasting transformational change in West End, Rock Island. And I know that this work will carry out throughout the Quad Cities community and work to really redevelop our urban areas. One of the things that the director from Omaha said is these communities have some of the highest return of investment when truly invested in. And I believe that that's the case in West End, Rock Island. I'm also doing consulting work for the Watertown community in East Moline. We have some conversations in Davenport going. This conversation is really ripe, and right now Rock Island is the leader in urban development in the Quad Cities. And we hope that that work can carry out through the rest of the Quad Cities and truly create a Quad Cities that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive for all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery. And so, with that, let's talk about our timeline. You all are well aware that we started in May with our work groups, and right now we're in November and we're in our action planning phase. And we'll be in that phase until January, where we'll begin with a draft action plan with a plan done in February 2024. And that'll lead us into year one, where we'll be looking to establish a strong foundation for this work, making sure we have the staffing, the resources for that staffing, and understanding of the plan well enough to start really getting some work done. Because in year two, we'll be focusing on implementation of the work. That's not to say that implementation can happen in year one or building of the foundation won't happen in year two. It's just these are the areas of focus during that time. In year three, we'll be evolving, looking at what we've accomplished, what things continue to need to be done, reevaluating, but most importantly, doing an excellent job in sharing this story across our community and across our Quad Cities, leading to 2027 beyond, doing the same things we have been doing, looking at the work we've done, reevaluating, having that communication with our community, that dialogue, that give and take to make sure we know that we are moving forward. I can't emphasize enough that this is an iterative process, meaning that there will be times when there's a misstep, but that's a learning opportunity. A step backward can lead to several steps moving forward, and that's the nature of this process. It can be a bit messy, but it's never sloppy, and it is intentional. And so that's what we're looking for in regards to the timeline. What's really, I think, is important for this council and others to know, but for this council to know, is that this work does completely align with the goals that you devised for the city of Rock Island. That, as you can well see, this is truly community-driven. Grassroots leadership is completely involved in driving this process. It's long-term, it's holistic, meaning it's taking at different looks of the aspects of life in the community, and not looking at things in silos, but as one entity, as no one lives their lives in a silo. We'll be addressing symptoms and root causes, and then what Avery was speaking about, it's replicable and it's scalable, which is really important for our community and beyond. And the last thing I want to say about what's really vital to know is that it is equity and inclusion in action. Many people have been utilizing these words as buzzwords. This is an opportunity for us to show how we can actually put this into work. Others have done it, and we can do it just as well or even better. Finally, I'm going to let Linda Sargent speak to what also the final thing is probably important for you all to know, and then open it up for questions or discussion. Linda?
Thank you, Jerry. Good evening. As Jerry said, my name is Linda Sargent, and I'm privileged to be the oldest member of the steering committee. I am able to have memories of when I grew up in the West End neighborhoods of Rock Island. I could walk to stores, 4 or 5 within my neighborhood, right where the Martin Luther King Center sits today. Some of you don't know, but it was a movie theater there called the Rialto. Across the street from that, there was a high-end department store called Halpern's. There were all kinds of businesses in those neighborhoods, bakeries, laundromats, and homes that were cared for, families that were united, a lot of pride. So it's very grievous to me to see what has happened over time. I became the first member of my family. I was raised by 2 grandparents. My grandfather had a 3rd grade education, and my grandmother may have had an 8th grade. I became the first one in my family to graduate from college by God's grace. And then, by His grace again, my youngest daughter was able to go on, stand on my shoulders. Is currently an attorney working for the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. We are from the West End neighborhood of Rock Island. In the survey that was done by Enterprise, I was very proud to see that Heart of Hope Ministries that I lead was listed as a trusted vital resource, one of 5 assets listed there. And so my background is that I was an accountant at Trinity Medical Center. I retired early to start that outreach ministry that I'm really proud to tell you that just in last year, in 2022, over 15,000 individuals in the Quad Cities received food from our outreach ministry. Thousands of people have received clothing. We have youth and adult programs as well. When Jerry asked me about being a part of the steering committee, I was so honored. And it's my understanding that Mayor Tomes approached Deere and Company Foundation and asked about them investing in our community because they are already investing in our neighboring cities. And so why not Rock Island? Deere sat down with a group of leaders from our community and asked 2 questions. The first one, are you dreaming big enough? Boy, that excited my spirit because I can dream big. The second one was, are there the right people at the table to make it happen? I'm believing today that all of you seated at those tables, along with the people that are part of this West End revitalization working groups, that we are the right people. I'm a part of the housing and land working group, and there's 2 meetings that have impacted me greatly. One, as a team, we got in a van and we traveled the streets that are part of the West End. And I was so troubled to see so many vacant lots, so many homes needing tender, loving care. The second meeting was right here at City Hall with Miles Brainerd and his staff. And there was a table, long table, and he displayed for us surveys that had been done for revitalization projects in Rock Island, going back all the way to 1957. That also is troublesome, that those were hours and hours of people's time that they invested in trying to put a plan together. So please, let's make it happen. There's a picture on the screen here of the young people that come to the Martin Luther King Center. Let's make it happen for them, that they can grow up having neighborhoods that they want to live in, that they're proud of, with goals and dreams. Thank you for supporting the West End revitalization. We are looking forward to sharing our plan with you in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. What a perfect example. The passion that's invested, also balanced with the desire to have real concrete plans moving forward. And so, with that update, I'd like to open it to you all for any questions or discussion you'd like to have around West End revitalization. I would invite some of the members of the steering committee to help me answer questions I might not have the nuanced detail that they have the understanding of.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a statement. I just want to thank everyone from the steering committee, from the board, for your passion, your dedication, your time, your energy that you've put into this process. It's not easy. There's a lot of people who always will love to start ideas like this and start on initiatives, and then they fall off before the completion. I too, Ms. Sargent, when I first got elected, I seen the neighborhood plans, the dedication of the members that were included in those neighborhood plans. They're gone. They're no longer here. They're passed away. So they never were able to see those dreams come to fruition. I think this is time for us to stop making plans and then putting it on a shelf and it goes away. This is the time for us to actually put something in. For a resident who was born and raised in the West End of Rock Island, so many of our people leave Rock Island because of the conditions that they grow up in. They want something better. The thing when I was going to school is most people will say, I can't wait to move on top of the hill, because they have all the amenities that we don't have in the on the West End. We don't have food. We don't have gas stations. We don't have health care. We don't have the basic amenities that most people take for granted that live on top of the hill. The better homes, the better playgrounds, the better streets. All of that is just all included in those neighborhood plans. If you look at what's described in the neighborhood plans, it's the exact same thing that's discussed in this assessment. And I was adamant when we were doing that assessment that I would not let them take anything off. Everything had to stay on because we can't afford to take it off at this point. We're missing everything. So I, again, commend you for your time, your energy, and it's a tough process. It's going to get harder as it goes on. But hopefully we see this through this time and we can move forward. There was a reporter, not in real quick, there was a reporter who reached out to me as soon as the assessment came up. And first thing he said is that I've never seen this happen out of my 30-plus years of reporting in the Quad Cities, that the community or the city actually takes the word from the citizens and moves forward in this kind of directive. Typically, it's giving force-fed. Council, city, tells you what you need and what you want. Half the time, you never hear from citizens of getting that input. And this time, we're doing it backward, doing it reverse, doing it the correct way. I appreciate the city for continuing to move forward in this process. I pray that we move forward in this process in a successful way. And again, I just want to thank you. From this seat, I want to thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, comments, questions? Gwen?
Well, I would just like to echo Alderman Robinson's thanks. I was fortunate enough to, when you invited us to attend the meeting, the joint meeting of all the working groups and the steering committee in September. A lot of great ideas were raised that day. I hope we can see some of them in the final plan. I'd also like to just comment, I have been getting really good reports on the work that's being done by the working groups, so that's very reassuring. I've not heard anything negative, actually, so that's really great. And I would just like to shout out for Heart of Hope Ministries. I was fortunate enough to attend their banquet a week or so ago, and it was truly inspiring what they are accomplishing. And I'm proud because they are in the 3rd Ward, too. So thank you, Pastor Sargent, and keep up the good work. I just have one question. So is it the working groups, or was it the consultants who evaluated, like, in the original report, there were lots of strategies thrown in? So is it the working groups doing the assessment of all those and then choosing which ones to focus on? Is that how it's going?
So the consultant provided all those recommendations, as you
Right,
said.
in the original report, yep.
The steering committee prioritized those recommendations in each impact area in order to get a really good running start with the working groups. And since then, the working groups have had significant input on revising some of those, certainly reprioritizing those. So the simple answer is all of them. How about that as a question answer? Is that accurate? Okay.
Yep.
Fine-tuning it, yes, they have fine-tuned it. They have caught me several times on misspeaking on what a particular strategy is.
Keep up the good work.
Any other questions? I have a couple, just clarification more than maybe with this question, but obviously we hired a consultant on the first phase to help do that. And part of that was originally to go door to door and ask questions and do a survey. I know COVID kicked in and we didn't do that. So did we or did we not? I don't think we did go back and try to reinstitute a door to door survey.
We did that.
You did that?
And it wasn't Enterprise that actually did it. It was a group of community members, including one of our council members, that engaged in that door-to-door asking questions from a survey that they had heavy influence in designing.
And that survey was what the consultant would have put together, same type of questions or issues or format?
Right.
Okay.
The consultant guided the creation of that survey process,
Right.
utilizing the expertise of folks who are living in the area.
Yeah, I knew they were going to use both people living here and everything else, but I just wasn't too sure if it was a specific format or questions or, so you could standardize and assemble things together. Did the consultant help assemble those thoughts? I know we had the original book, but did the consultant help with that final document, correct?
So
With that, right?
the information's gathered, compiled, given to our consultant to create the assessment with the recommendations.
Okay. Then the other I thought the consultant we hired him for the second phase to do something. I haven't heard anything mentioned about the consultant being involved?
Great question. Our consultant's involved on, I want to even say a biweekly, twice a week, maybe even more basis, coaching and guiding this process behind the scenes, coaching our coordinator, meeting with us on a regular basis to help us troubleshoot, but also provide some guidance from their expertise on how to continue moving forward. They'll also be helping us with identifying resources moving forward and compiling that final plan. So they've been engaged throughout the entire process.
Did you have something else?
Well, we only extended their contract through 2023, so we're going to have to,
I believe it's through 2024
through like March? Oh, okay.
for the final plan.
Completion of the second phase, or this part of the phase, I thought.
The one-year extension.
And then my understanding, who paid for what part of that consulting and?
John Deere Foundation, or John Deere, paid for all of that work.
Both phases, 100% of it?
All of the work we're currently in, I'm sorry, the city provided $40,000 towards an $80,000 assessment.
Okay. And has Deere been involved at all from, with the current happenings and up to speed, that sort of thing?
Yes, we've had the president of the foundation involved in one of our steering committee meetings. I'm even receiving emails from them as far as thoughts on who might be a good person to engage moving forward. We will be presenting to them within this month or the next month on our progress so that we can maintain their level of interest.
Because we're hoping there's funding, because it's not going to be cheap to implement whatever they come up with and everything else.
You're welcome to be in the room for that ask.
When he said hiring or ideas to hire someone to further it, you said John Deere Foundation had ideas? You mean someone who would steer the implementation of the plan, or?
Not concrete ideas as far as that discrete, but during our steering committee, they were engaged in that process, in that meeting, about how, they've done this sort of support work for work like this in the past. For instance, Mercado on Fifth, they were a supporter of that.
This is bigger than that, a lot bigger.
I'm on that board, so I'll refrain.
It may or may not be, but Deere is, like I say, is committed and working with it, that's for sure. They understand what's going on.
Representing the Fifth Ward, I'll just say that this is very reminiscent to a similar conversation that we had regarding our downtown, just, over the past 3 years. We've got all these plans, they're collecting dust, nothing's being done for years and years and years. Certainly, well, maybe as far back as 1957. I don't know when we want to say that the downtown began its descent, but a similar conversation about, we have these plans, now how do we execute them? We are making progress on the downtown by creating a foundation, an organization, the new Rock Island Downtown Alliance, with sustainable funding that will continue to grow as we succeed in downtown Rock Island. So it sounds like you are exactly on the right track, thinking about foundation, right? Not just a one-time project, but who's actually going to do this work? How is it going to be funded long-term? That's how we change things. And we're having this conversation throughout the entire city, right? Of how do we fund road repair sustainably? How do we fund building maintenance sustainably? There's a bit of a awakening maybe of, okay, we're all kind of tired of saying, we should really do something here, and realizing, well, this doesn't just get done by saying we need to do something, but by making serious investment and looking at ourselves and saying, well, nobody's going to save us, we got to save ourselves. And so I commend what you're doing, and let me know how I can help.
Thank you.
And once again, not to belabor it, but thank you to all the people volunteering their time and talents. It's not easy, and so thank you. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Sure. Keeping us from the budget talk.
I do want to add just briefly that I don't doubt that everybody that has been working on this dream for the past 60 plus years was as passionate as this group is. I do think that the strategies that we have in place provide a lot of accountability. And that accountability for us as a steering committee is to not fail our community, your community. Rock Island, my desire as a Rock Island citizen, and I always post on my Facebook stories, Rock Island strong, born and raised here, believe in Rock Island being one city, and have a lot of pride in that. But the sense of accountability that the steering committee has to our community, including everyone here in this room, is very high. And I think that we hold ourselves with a lot of pride when we talk about the accountability that we have towards one another. And when you start seeing this group as an asset to not just Rock Island, but to the Quad Cities in its early phase, I think that's commendable. I can say in public, because it was a public ask, that even, having resources outside of our city to reach out to us, such as Bi-State Regional Commission, to look at the West End revitalization as needing input from this group is an asset to our community overall. So even in our early phases, to be an asset to not just Rock Island, but to the Quad Cities, in having input in long-term plans is commendable to this group as well.
One of our steering committee members, Mr. Isaac Carr.
Good evening. My name is Isaac Carr. I represent the immigrants and refugee. I moved to this area about 17, 18 years ago because I need a better life. I represent the voices of people who English is limited. My name is Isaac Carr because I am from Liberia, a grandson or nephew to the United States. I'm not going to tell you the story. I live in Manor Home, where I had the privilege to meet Officer Robinson. And one of my daughters who graduated, she was able to take her to Washington, D.C. She wouldn't have seen Washington, D.C. if we did not have those connections. My other daughter is in the Concordia University. Rock Island is a home for these new dreamers, immigrant and refugee. When I first wanted to buy my house, there was a very decent building in the West End for $30,000. And when I look at the neighborhood, I felt that wasn't going to be the better place and best place to raise my family. I went right behind Hy-Vee up the hill and bought a house for $120,000 versus $30,000. I am very proud to resign or quit a job that I was doing for $25, $30 to work for QC Air, the Quad City Alliance for Immigrant and Refugee, because I wanted to meet the needs of other immigrant and refugee whose voices are not heard and who will not be able to reach people like you. And I'm privileged every day to meet with people like you because of the passions and relief that we get from people of such that we volunteer. I just left a meeting and I told them I couldn't finish the meeting and I have to come here because we have to do what we have to do. As we aspire, as I look at him, he's one of the youngest in the council. As we aspire with age,
Looks could be deceiving, but no.
as we aspire with age, what do we want to do to inspire other people? If you drive down 11th Street and 9th Street, it's a dead end. If you go to Bedendorf, you see all the Indians from Bangladesh and other places. All of the rich immigrant community are fleeing and crossing over into those neighborhoods. My kids have been pushing me, can we move to Chicago or Texas? And I told them Rock Island is our home. What can we do different to inspire the next growing generation to stay in this area? Again, we have to do it together. We volunteer every day. Not only this, but we cried out. It's about Thanksgiving. Christmas is around the corner. Where are the Christmas lights crossing over every street and corners of part of Rock Island? Not only downtown. If it will cost you and us, not tax dollar, but we can set up a trust fund on every paycheck we can put in $1 with every community member, and that can be used to continue our developmental process. We look forward to doing greater things. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity, and thank you, Jerry, to the group, all of you who selected some of us, that we can do this together, and we continue to volunteer. Even though they will say 10 months, but I believe we've been in it for over a year, voluntarily, and working harder and harder every day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? We all right? Good deal. Oh. All right, if that's it, Jerry, then we will move on to the next. All right, thank you. All right. Next up, finance. Talk about budget. That's exciting news.
I'm going to make a couple opening comments, cover the first couple slides. You got the, can you advance to the next one? Yep, good. I'm going to go real quick, just by way of introduction. Tonight, we're going to provide a broad overview of the FY24 proposed budget. We're a little bit behind schedule, and I apologize for that, but you know, we're committed to doing whatever the council needs to make good decisions and provide you with whatever information you require to do that. Go ahead to the next slide real quick. I want to start out by thanking Jessica Sager and Brian Smith and all the department directors and division heads for the hard work they have put into this budget. It's been a challenging budget, as you'll see. There's some good things happening, but there's also some real challenges, and a lot of hard work has gone into putting this together. When we think about the you know, the budget and moving into the next year and proposing it, key consideration is balancing the budget. Of course, we're required by law to do that. You always remember that a balanced budget is revenues and expenditures, but also available fund balance can contribute to balancing that, and you'll see some of that tonight. I won't go over all of these, but keeping financial impacts down to citizens is a key, providing good quality services, and also linking what we budget in the capital plan and the budget to the council goals to ensure that the work that we're doing is moving those forward. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jessica to go through the numbers.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. As City Manager Thompson said, my name is Jessica Sager. I'm here with Budgets and Grants Manager Brian Smith. Well, the three of us will be going through the budget, and then we'll have a chance for some questions at the end. Back up just a bit. So tonight's presentation will review the budget goals and the proposed total of budgeted revenues and expenditures for all city funds. We're going to review the general fund, some of the city's enterprise funds, the library, and MLK. And then finally, we'll review the city's property taxes, proposed levy, and then next steps. As City Manager Thompson mentioned, the main directive of the budget process is to balance the budget in all cities' funds. Hold on one second, let me move this. A balanced budget generally means that the revenues and the expenditures match, but as he mentioned, there are times where you can use a surplus from the prior year to help balance the budget, which is the instance in this year. Some of the city's funds have challenges, and it's management's goal to keep financial impacts to a minimum while at the same time maintaining the level of service residents and businesses of Rock Island have come to expect from the city. And finally, it's always our goal to keep fiscal responsibility in mind when developing the budget, and it's important to preserve the current position while taking steps to improve the financial future. Total proposed budgeted revenue for all funds is $164 million. The biggest revenue category is labeled Other at $34.3 million. This category is internal related, such as self-insurance premiums, employer portion of health insurance costs, employer and employee retirement contributions, and then also included are payments to the fleet from different departments. State and local taxes represent the second largest category at $31.3 million. Charges for services is at $29.5 million, and that accounts for approximately 18% of the revenue. This slide depicts the breakdown for state and local taxes, which makes up over $31 million or 19%. Replacement tax is $6.2 million, income tax is $6 million, and those two make up the largest portion of this category. The personal property replacement tax, or PPRT, continues to outperform our expectations. However, it's expected to decline in 2024, so we've taken that into consideration when developing the budget. The next few slides provide a 10-year history for the major state and local taxes. The first one is municipal utility tax. The 2023 year-to-date collections are at $1.52 million. There are about 3 months of collections that we still need to do. So there's about another $600,000 that we're expecting to collect for this tax. It'll bring us closer in line with what was budgeted in 2023. So we've budgeted $2.3 million for 2024. Local option sales tax, 2023 year-to-date collections are $1.76 million. We have 4 months of collections left for this tax, so we have about $1 million remaining to collect before the end of the year. 2024 budget is just over $3 million. Food and beverage tax, 2023 year-to-date collections are about $709,000 with 3 months remaining, so we're anticipating another $257,000, and we've budgeted about $1 million for 2024. State income tax, the 2023 year-to-date collections are $4.6 million. 3 months are still remaining for collection on this tax, so we anticipate another $1.3 million. And for 2024, we've budgeted $6 million. Motor fuel tax, 2023 collections are just over $1 million with 3 months remaining, so we're anticipating another $382,000. The budget for this one was $1.55 million. Replacement tax, we've got 2 months left to be recorded for replacement tax, so year-to-date collections so far, $6.5 million. We budgeted $6.2 million for 2024, anticipating that decline in this tax.
What is a replacement tax? I'm sorry.
The replacement tax, that's the personal property fund replacement tax. So that's the revenue that was lost by local governments after it was eliminated in 1970. So we've been collecting that. In 2022, you'll notice that it was a little bit higher than the rest of the years. The state had an incorrect model, so started disseminating some payments that were wrong, and now they're making attempts to take those back from the cities.
Okay, thank you.
Next is sales tax. 2023 year-to-date collections total $2.6 million. We have another 4 months left to collect, so another $1.2 million for that. And 2024 budget is $3.8 million. Use tax, 2023 year-to-date is $844,000. We have 5 months left to be recorded for this one, so about another $550,000 is anticipated for this category. And 2024 budget is $1.55 million. Finally, gaming tax. 2023 year-to-date collections are just over $2 million, 4 months left to collect, so we have another $1.2 million that we're anticipating, and the 2024 budget for this section was $3.8 million. I'm going to hand it over to Brian to go over some more slides for you. We're going to fight over this little podium.
No problem. All right. This next slide here just kind of depict some key assumptions that we have assumed in the budget. So the employer IMRF percentage is going up to 5.72%. It was last year was at, or this year was at 4.84. This number is the preliminary rate, so we will get the final rate next week. So last year it stayed the same as the preliminary rate, so we assume it'll be the same. Police and payroll pension percentage rose almost 18%. And then fire payroll pension percentage rose almost 8%. Medical health insurance went up 12.5%, and then those are all the GWIs. Those numbers from unit contracts are estimated if those contracts are expiring and non-affiliates. Okay, the proposed expenditure budget for all funds of the city is $174 million. The calendar year CY23 adopted was $158 million, so this is about a 9% increase. This chart captures total spending across 11 departments and over 40 active funds. The general fund represents the largest portion of the city's overall budget at $60.7 million, followed by utility funds, water, sewer, stormwater. The economic development fund at $6.7 million. That includes all the TIF districts, along with the CDBG grant and their funds. Police and fire pensions account for $13 million. Parks and Rec accounts for $7.7 million. Debt service is $3.8 million. Library is at $3.4 million, and capital improvements right now is at $800,000. All other funds includes fleet services, MFT tax, gaming, federal, state, and drug prevention, engineering, fleet maintenance, and fleet amortization. As we mentioned, there was a 9% increase in the expenditures from this year to last year, or 24 to 23. General fund increased by 11.7 million. Most of that is due to, we'll get to it in a little bit, but the excess from 2022 being used to cover the balance for 2024. Water, sewer, and storm all increased by 2.3 million or 7%. No. Oops. This slide represents the total citywide expenditure budget, but it breaks down the expenditure into categories rather than function. Personnel costs make up about 36% of the overall budget. Services is the next largest category at 34.9 or 20%. Infrastructure maintenance costs, service contracts, that's the main driver in the services. Transfers are at 13.4% of expenditures, or 23.5 million. This is interactions between funds for transfers to cover your costs of administrative services, vehicle maintenance, etc. And also included is a 6.12 million transfer from ARPA fund to the general fund for revenue replacements to kind of get rid of the ARPA fund balance. Debt service is at 7% or 11.7 million of expenditures, while others is a catch-all for such expenditures such as grants, subcontracts, contributions, sponsorships, reference materials. And supplies is at 5.6% of expenditures. Big driver there is like plumbing supplies, chemical costs have gone way up. So this slide depicts a comparison by category. Personnel costs increased by 3.6 million from the prior year, and as a result of a combination of your natural GWIs and salaries, pension costs, and increases in health insurance. Services, the next largest category at 34.9 million. And again, that involves maintenance and service contracts and increases in services. And other examples would be insurance claims, premiums, utilities, phones, audit and banking contracts, credit card fees, legal fees, engineering services. Transfers increased by 23.4%. The majority, like I said before, represents the transfer from ARPA and for revenue replacement and other just general charges from departments to. Then other contingency, also that has to do with ARPA. The way we budget it is to put it in the budget, and then we can transfer it out of there to the appropriate account as needed. And then supplies increased 32%, and capital expenditures increased 23%. As we mentioned, one budget challenge is rising personnel costs. The majority of employees are subject to collective bargaining contracts with negotiated pay increases. Police and fire pensions are state mandated and were earned by current and former members of the police and fire departments as part of their compensation to provide safety and well-being for the citizens of Rock Island. Public safety pension costs continue to increase and will continue to do so as we point towards 90% funding by the year 2040. The city stands by the obligation to fund and fire and police pensions, but at the same time is aware of the budgetary impacts. So as you can see, they have started to increase, as you're all well aware. And for MRF costs, like I mentioned, they're going up from 5.72% from 4.84%. And IMRF stands for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which has provided pension services to employees of local government and school districts in Illinois. The Illinois Pension Code does determine how IMRF administers benefit plans, but not on the same level as mandating pension payments. So this chart here just kind of summarizes the police and fire pensions for the last 10 years. As you can see, they're trending upwards. And recently with the consolidation, we hope that this helps address the rising costs of pensions and provide some relief to the local municipalities. Here is a FTE history that is initiated in the 2024 budget. For this year, we have 442.18 FTEs, and over the past 14 years, it has declined by 24.84. Here is a breakdown of all new positions for the 2024 budget. As you can see, the new Economic Development Director, that was offset by a vacant position in CD that has been vacant for a while, so we replaced that one with that. A new city attorney now is on board as a personnel cost. MLK added a second West End coordinator, which is funded by Fund 901. Fire added a full-time office assistant. Parks just increased hours across part-time positions. Library added a full-time librarian and a part-time branches child aid position. And just the highlight, and so engineering has been a trouble fund basically since I've got here. So here's a slide just showing the last 5 years history in the engineering fund, which is an internal service fund. And this year, the general fund provided a general fund transfer to balance their budget of $312,899. In 2024, we actually balanced the engineering fund without any use of any transfers needed, and that's the first time the fund has been balanced since 2017. Any questions?
Question?
Yeah.
So you're balancing the budget with a transfer for engineering, but the ending equity in cash for calendar year 2022 is over $2 million.
Right.
And so are you?
So we're just balancing the budget. We're just matching up revenues and expenses for 2024.
But you're not doing anything about the negative cash balance?
Correct. It's on our mind, and
Well, you'll see later. We can't solve every problem at once.
yeah,
It's
a holistic approach. You kind of got to look at it as a whole and kind of tackle one problem at a time.
There's a lot of fund balances in the negative.
As you can see from the history of it, the key here was stop making it worse.
Bleeding.
Yep.
To that end, how are we stopping the bleeding here? Are we having other departments contribute to engineering? What are we doing?
Yep. So for this is just charging more across the board for the engineering services and then cutting costs. And that kind of goes for fleet too. It's in the slide later where we balance fleet for the first time, fleet maintenance for the first time since 2019. And that was before they took out fleet amortization. And that was just due to charging appropriate costs to all the funds and then reducing expenses.
I'll wait until the next slide to ask about amortization.
Okay. And next, I'll bring Jessica
Why
back.
did you budget 32% for the supplies going up? That
32
seems
supplies.
very aggressive. I know the cost of goods and services
Some
has
of
gone
that
up, but-
supplies I looked at, chemicals are going up, and then there's also supplies. They're doing the water meter project, so water meters fit into the supplies category because they're small. So that was like 1.1 million. So that was a huge driving factor for that one.
Mostly
Yep.
chemicals.
And in chemicals too, yeah. Chemical costs have skyrocketed 50% probably over the last year or two.
With the gaming tax, did you figure in additional revenue from sports wagering?
We
coming
did
to
increase
Rock
it 200,000,
Okay.
and, it's to be conservative, right? We hopefully that generates more, but as we wait to see how that actually impacts the budget, we can.
Yeah, that's a
Yep.
general approach to kind of a new revenue like that,
Yeah, I
not knowing
understand.
what it's
Just
gonna
asking.
do. You be conservative and then adjust accordingly.
Trust but verify.
Yeah. Rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed.
Okay, the next few slides are going to focus on the general fund specifically. So a few of the smaller funds, the special funds, which are the funds that account for less than $15,000, are included in the general fund as well, but not any of the bigger ones. So the total proposed general fund revenues are $56 million, which is up $6.3 million or 13% from the adopted budget. The expenditures for these same funds are $60.7 million, which is up $10.3 million or 20%. And that can be attributed to the $6.8 million in ARPA revenue replacement and the $4.7 million that we have for the general fund excess transfer that we'll be doing to help balance the 2024 budget. We'll talk about that in a few slides later. This slide shows the breakdown of the $60.7 million expenditures by department, and it's rounded in millions. The top three categories represent 57% of the general fund expenditure budget. Police constitutes the largest share at 31%, fire 24%, and public works is 12%. Again, finance is a little distorted because we have the transfers in, so the transfer in from ARPA and then also the transfer in from the excess surplus that we're using to balance the budget. So the finance department's budget is not usually 24%, but it is depicted in that because the expenditures are listed there as well. Of the general fund's $60.7 million budget, 59% is for personnel expenses, so going back to personnel. The next largest category is transfers at 16%, and services follow at 14%. This slide will show you personnel by department. The total proposed personnel costs for 2024 are $35.68 million. Of that $35.68 million, $29.22 million are related to public safety, which includes police and fire, and equates to 81% of total personnel costs. The next largest is Public Works at 6.6%, Community and Economic Development is 4.3%, while Finance, Information Technology, General Information, which is the mayor and council, and Human Resources make up the rest. It is the goal of the City of Rock Island to maintain a sufficient cash balance in its general fund so that a positive cash balance and fund balance is maintained at the end of every year. The current fund balance policy requires 60 to 90 days worth of budgeted operated expenditures. We've got that highlighted in yellow on the slide. The policy specifically states any general fund balance in its excess of this requirement that has not been assigned to fund the general fund operations of the next fiscal year will be transferred to the Capital Improvements Fund at the completion of the annual audit. So we are currently forecasting a surplus for 2023 of $2.5 million. This can be used to fund a future budget once the audit is completed or will be moved to the Capital Improvements Fund.
I have a question about reserves. So I think I read recently that the bond agencies were recommending that the state of Illinois budget 10% of revenues for reserves, not 90 days of expenditures. Why is that? Why, I mean, and maybe this, I don't know if this is a question for you guys, but what percent of our revenue is 90 days of expenditures for us? I mean, why are they saying that the state of Illinois should do 10% of revenues and we're doing 90 days of expenditures?
So 90 days would be about 25% because it's a quarter of your budget. So 10% seems kind of low to me. I mean,
It is the state of Illinois.
so you're talking about 1 month worth then, So
Okay.
I think 25% is a good start,
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
can't
it varies by city, how much you should retain, if you have a lot of insurance exposure like we do, natural hazard exposure like we do, things of that nature, it's better to be on the conservative side. The GFOA Fund balance policy provides kind of a range, I think, from 5 or 10 to 25, something like that. So we're on the higher end, but I think given, the various factors that we deal with, it's a good thing.
No, that's fine.
And I don't know
was just
why
curious
Illinois is
about-
doing revenue. It's been my past experience that it's always based on expenditures, so it'd be interesting to go back and see what their rationale is for revenue versus expenditures.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm curious about it. Why? Okay. Thank you.
So going back to 2022, there was a surplus or an excess in 2020, at the end of 2022, it was $7.8 million. On the screen is a breakdown of how that excess has been used to balance the 2024 budget. We used $2.4 million to balance the general fund. $421,794 was used to balance the Parks and Recreation Fund. $1.2 million was used to eliminate negative fund balances in the Capital Improvement Fund and a small fund called the U.S. Department of Justice Grant Fund. And then finally, we included an additional fire truck in the amount of $600,000, which leaves a surplus balance of just over $3 million. We've included a slide for some possible suggestions.
Back up to that one.
Oh, sure.
So I didn't hear, what is Fund 301?
Fund 301 is the Capital Improvements Fund.
And the reason we recommended that one, you'll see later, there's a,
Because, okay, and there's a negative balance, fund balance in that one, not just budget.
and there's no feasible way it's ever going to repay that. It
Right.
doesn't have any regular revenue.
Right. And what's Fund 241?
241 was the U.S. Department of
Oh,
Justice Grant Fund. So it had.
at the what we call it, JAG
JAG,
grant?
yeah. It had a roughly $10,000 negative fund balance, so we just decided to write that off, balance that out.
Just a quick note on this slide.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so there's 3 million excess balance remaining.
Correct.
And do we have a slide in here, what we're gonna do with that $3 million? Yep.
We have suggestions, we don't,
Okay, that's the next one.
I
Okay.
just want to comment on this slide real quick. A couple of things. This doesn't include the balance from the prior slide, the $2.5 million. When we started working on the '24 budget, we were over $4 million of a deficit. And my goal was, in order to not make too many cuts too quickly, was to try to make the deficit in the general fund for 2024 equal the surplus in 2023. So, once 23 is done and audited and it comes in at 2.5 million or something along those lines, it'll be added to this 22 excess. So we would anticipate probably having over $5 million. The other thing related to fleet amortization, Alderman Parker had asked kind of about that. The situation with that fund, as you'll see later, is pretty dire. At the end of 2024, we'll have essentially spent every dollar that's in it. And that's why there's money here related to a fire truck. We have a couple fire trucks that are on service permanently. We had budgeted for one already in the '24 budget. And while that's the bad news about the fleet amortization fund, we've bought a lot of vehicles. At the end of 2024, if the budget's approved, we'll have bought 2 fire trucks, 3 ambulances, replaced the whole snow fleet, replaced numerous of the Honda Civics. So the fleet won't be in too bad of a shape. The fleet amortization fund will be in a tough spot, and we'll begin to work on strategy related to improving that. As Jessica indicated, the next slide, talk about some of the other things that we looked at or considered related to the excess fund balance. If things work out as planned and we have the 3 million plus the 2.5, we'll have 5.5 million. So I would suggest not spending any of that money until we get to the 25 budget, because the problems related to the deficit that we have this year aren't going to go away. We're going to have them next year. So my strategy would be to maintain some of this excess fund balance to address, future general fund problems, and allow us to work through a strategy to balance the budget and get away from what, you know, is really kind of a structural deficit. Costs continuing to go up, revenues, you know, going up in a flatter amount. But you go ahead with the next slide and talk about some of the things we looked at.
Okay. So in an effort to maintain that fiscal responsibility without utilizing the entire surplus from 2022, several reductions were included in the proposed budget in front of you. We have some reductions including delayed hirings of open positions, reductions in overtime, reduction of legal services, professional development, supplies, and equipment. We removed a small land purchase from the proposed CED budget and reallocated some eligible expenses to the MFT fund. And finally, the proposed budget also includes $500,000 in unrestricted ARPA funds that will be used for some necessary road repair.
Go back to the last slide. We want to talk about that one more second. Go back one more slide.
Oh, one more? Sorry.
Yeah,
We thought you meant
skip
cuz.
over that
Okay,
one.
never
We're going to
mind.
talk a little bit more about it. You know, we looked at a variety of things. Some of the suggestions, you don't want to use excess fund balance to fund ongoing operations. But one of the things that we've talked about in the past would be to establish an OPEB trust. You know, we have an OPEB liability. We don't fund an OPEB trust. Many cities don't, but it's a good idea to do it. And even if we can just start putting small amounts in there, that would be a good idea. Some of the other items related to vehicle replacement and things like that, but I would suggest maintaining the current fund balance that's showing until we see how 2024 goes. Okay, go ahead.
All right, the next few slides will focus on the Public Works Enterprise Funds, MLK funds, parks, and library. So as you know, there are different types of funds in government fund accounting. Enterprise funds are also known as business-type funds, meaning that their accounting is more like in a business you would see. They are generally self-supporting, and charges for services make up the majority of their revenues. So the wastewater fund is the largest of the city's enterprise funds, with expenditures in CY24 planned at $13.4 million. Debt service makes up a large portion of this, is over $5.1 million. This is mostly for low-interest loans through the IEPA for implementation of federally mandated programs. The water fund is the second largest of the public works funds, and they have $11.7 million budgeted for next year. Stormwater, refuse, and marina make up the remaining public works funds. And as you can see, we have beginning cash and ending cash estimates for all these funds. So there is some work to be made on all of these.
Many of these funds, absent the marina, you know, the fund model would show that in the next few years that these will be dramatically reduced, and we can show you those if you're interested in seeing them. One reason the stormwater fund is going negative is that there's a grant opportunity to do a project, $500,000 grant. So we're going to go ahead and recommend moving forward with that project, and then over the next couple of years, that negative balance will go away.
Yeah.
It will kind of structure it as sort of an interfund loan, if you will. So although our goal is not to create more negative balances, this is one case where we're like recommended to do it.
Reimbursement grant? Like,
Do you know, Mike, is there a reimbursement grant?
that why we have to go? Is it a reimbursement grant? That's why we, like, are going negative in that fund?
It's a congressional earmark funding, essentially. I don't know what the new term is for
Well,
this year.
I mean, I'm saying, do we have to pay the expenses and then we get it reimbursed, or we're gonna get this money up front?
Oh, it's a much larger project. It's,
Yeah, the
grant's
grant is for
five-
500,000,
Yeah.
but our responsibility or match.
Our match.
Is about 1.2.
Yeah.
That's what's causing
And
the
it's
deficit.
18th Avenue Pump Station. It's a flood pump station that when the Mississippi River floods, that pump is the first to kick on and, eject water from a drainage ditch along 18th Avenue down near Sunset Marina. It's the first to come on, and it's the last pump to get turned off. It's a very old pump. We've had to rebuild it several times. We're dealing with siltation issues in the ditch, so it's a much-needed project. And again, the fund is negative because of the amount of money that we're having to match that grant. but it's a very much needed project.
Thank you.
Okay, this next slide here just shows the rate increases that are in line for next year following the rate study. Water rates are scheduled to go up by 5.5%, wastewater rates are scheduled to go up by 4.5%, and stormwater rates are going up by about 7%. Refuse rates are remaining the same. This slide shows the all the MLK-related funds. As you can see, 211 there on the left is largely supported by the general fund. In CY23, we had a $180,000 transfer to support 211. In CY24, we raised it up to $195,000. That was due to there was a shared position in the budget that was split between finance and the MLK Center. We have removed that position, so that's say the general fund about $23,000. So we just increased there slightly just to kind of get that fund balanced. Then the other three funds are all component funds, and those are supported by grants and contributions from the state. So none of those funds are included in with general fund activity or city activity. The Parks and Recreation Fund is also an enterprise fund and is made up of several departments such as the golf courses, Whitewater Junction, and RIFAC. In addition to user fees, this fund also receives support from the property taxes. Of the fund's $7.2 million in revenues, property taxes make up about 31%. And of the $7.7 million of expenditures, personnel expenses make up 39% of their budget. A portion of this is due to the increased minimum wage that keeps going up $1 each year. Next year is going up to $14 an hour, and in 2025 is going up to $15 an hour. So this slide just shows a 5-year history of the Parks Fund. This year in 2023, we balanced it with a transfer from the general fund in the amount of $859,666. And then this year next year we are balancing it with a transfer of $421,794 general fund transfer. We realize that this is an ongoing problem, but we did cut it in half from last year, so the solution's not an easy decision to make, but we are working towards a goal of getting it balanced. The library fund is a governmental fund and is therefore supported by property taxes and limited user fees. So proposed expenditures for CY24 are $3.4 million, and that also includes $180,000 in CIP projects as the library has decided to undergo for next year. The proposed property tax is $2.48 million, and personnel expenses make up 60% of the library's budget. And again, here's just like a 5-year history of the library fund and where it's at. Again, minimum wage doesn't help them out as it keeps going up. Property tax increased for them for revenue. And for next year, their library's proposed deficit is $292,316, but they have sufficient cash balance to support this, and $180,000 of that is just a one-time expenditures for capital improvement projects. Okay. And now we get to property tax. Property taxes are an important revenue source for the city. The total property tax revenue related to levies are proposed at $16,297,665. This is an increase of $1,159,578 from the CY22 levy. 68% of this proposed levy is allocated to support the police and fire pensions. Library and parks share of the recommended levy is 15% and 14% respectively. General fund accounts for only 2% of this recommendation, and then the public benefit portion is in therefore debt service fund to assist paying with debt-related expenses. So this table here breaks down last year's levy and this year's proposed levy.
Question?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Can you provide like a comparison to 2023
Yep. Right, this slide right here, I think is what you're looking at.
for the Yeah, the previous slide, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
What?
Did I answer your question?
I think the next slide.
Oh, the next slide, okay, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so this slide breaks down the difference from the last year's levy to this year's levy. General fund operations would receive 70% of the property tax levy, and that's a mixture of the police and fire pensions and the general fund operations. The proposed increases to cover police and fire pensions by reducing that amount to the general fund. Last year, Parks and Library both did not receive any increases. This proposal gives them both an increase equal to the estimated EAV increase of 7.66%. And then included in this table is the city's property tax valuation, which is part of the formula to calculate the taxing body's property tax rate. So we are, since we have anticipating a 7.66% increase in EAV, we are not changing the property tax rate, which is stay flat. And here is just a history of the tax rate by year, going back to 1986. As you can see, it kind of hit a peak in the early 90s and slowly declined throughout the years. And then it was in that trend until 2017, where it increased. And here's an EIV history going back to 2003. We've been on a good trend lately that it keeps going up, so that's a good thing for Rock Island. These are the 6 portions of the property tax levy. The last column depicts the 2023 levy of $16.3 million. Fire and police pensions costs are provided through the actuary. You can see from the bottom portion of the graph, the effect on the general fund has shrunk considerably over the last 10 years. Property taxes certainly gain the attention of the citizens and sometimes remind them that the city is just one portion of their property tax bills. There are other layers of governance known as overlapping tax districts. That includes the Rock Island County, the township, school district, airport, college, and transit authority. Each district establishes their own levy. This table shows the 7-year history of the breakdown of the tax bill and shows that the 2023 levy that is payable in 2024, the city of Rock Island's portion of the bill will be 22.5%, and when combined with the library, it would be total to 26.5%. The largest portion of the tax bill is currently the school district, which has averaged about 50% since 2016. So what does this mean for a homeowner in the city of Rock Island? With a proposed rate of 2.7566, the city's proportion of the taxes on a 100,000 home equals approximately $753. This table breaks down that amount by the portion of the city tax levy. And like we said, the largest portion goes to the fire and police pension, then library, and then parks fund. For comparison, in 2005, the levy is shown here has a rate of 2.573. So the rate has gone up $50 in the last 18 years. This chart here just depicts the operating general fund portion of the property tax levy. And since 2014, that portion has gone down about 90%. And last one here, this is just the proposed levy for the SSA downtown. We are going to leave the levy as is and do not anticipate an increase in that. And so the property tax rate will actually decrease from 1.1353 to 1.0521.
In the SSA, the reader board, they did meet and talk about this, and this was their desire that the levy stay the same, which would allow the tax rate to go down.
We're on the home stretch. I gave him all the hard property tax ones. On the screen before you, we have a list of the CED sponsorships and contributions that, for various organizations that were included in the budget, along with the Labor Day Parade and Red, White, and Boom. We get some questions on those, so we thought it would be important to show you where those sponsorships and contributions are and what they look like.
The Labor Day Parade is an increase. It's going to be their 40th anniversary.
So the total bond payments that are supported by the gaming tax revenue is $3.76 million with budgeted revenues of $3.8 million. The biggest difference from last year's, the approved 2023 budget, is the increase in the GO bond, the 2014B for the Watchtower. In 2023, that was an interest-only payment, but next year, beginning in 2024, we have to pay interest and principal, so that one did increase. And additionally, gaming funds will be used to fund the $85,400 for the library's portion of the GO bond 2020. This is a one-time expenditure that we did for 2024. We're not anticipating that gaming funds will be used moving forward. So a few positives. One of the directions we took from council in 2023 during that budget process was to balance some of the negative funds. We took that to heart. We took a hard look at the budget and tried to do what we could. As Brian mentioned, Fleet Services Fund 601 is balanced. Fund 606 has been balanced. We still have ARPA funding that's being used. Our revenue is trending upwards. And then, as Brian mentioned again, EAV has increased as well. Similarly, with some of the challenges, still we have funds that have negative fund balances. Vehicle building and computer replacement maintenance costs have gone up. We have some structural deficits, environmental mandates, with the population declining, and some long-term debt and liabilities. So this will be the one that Judith is most interested in. We have the negative fund balance slide. So we tried to highlight in blue the funds balances that are decreasing, which is good. A few of the ones in gray are ones that have been balanced or eliminated, and then the ones in yellow are the ones that are increasing from last year. There are a few reasons for that. 507 is increasing due to the CIP project that we just mentioned. 541, which is Marina. Marina's a hard one because there's some reduced revenue there, so that one's going up slightly. 609 has no funding source. It's for a bond payment, so because the bond payment's increasing, that one's going up. And then there's some of the MLK funds that are in there. So in conclusion, unlike last year, there were some reductions that were necessary in this budget. Staff has been diligent with attempting to keep ongoing expenses to a minimum while continuing to provide high levels of service. The influx of revenue from the state and revenue replacement from ARPA, along with remaining surplus funds, will provide resources to take care of some of the one-time projects that were included in the 2024 budget, but there's still work to be done, as we saw with our fund balance slide. I do want to thank the mayor and city council for your input during our one-on-one meetings, along with city manager Todd Thompson, who had to meet with Brian and I a lot, so we appreciate his time. And finally, I'd like to thank staff and the department directors. We had to go back to them a few times and ask for some reductions in their budgets, which I know took a lot of their time. So I appreciate the time that they spent preparing their budgets and then also incorporating some of the reductions that we asked. And then Todd, do you want to go over these slides?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last year. You know, the long-term strategy to solve some of our budget problems is to look at revenues, ways we can augment theirs, take advantage of things like the increase in the EAV, manage our expenses, and also critically is to grow the tax base, right? With the overriding narrative being that we want to focus our budget on our priorities and look at what we fund and how we fund it.
Okay. So we'll be covering the capital improvement budget in more detail, as well as holding the Truth in Taxation hearing on the Monday, November 27th meeting. Following that meeting will be the budget presented for approval on first reading December 11th and then again on December 18th. With that, Brian and I are happy to answer any additional questions you want me to.
We'll be scheduling individual meetings with the council in between now and the end of the month to talk more about this and answer any specific questions you have individually. or in groups of two perhaps, if that works out for folks.
Going back to the bond payments, the general obligation bonds. So next year, we have to start paying principal on Watchtower. So that's an additional $785,000. So was there sufficient money in gaming revenues to cover that? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, yep. So we anticipate 3.8 million in revenue next year, and 3.76 is gonna be all expended. So if we get that 3.8 in, we'll have a surplus of gaming of 25,000. There is a sufficient gaming, I know, yeah, I know, 25,000, whoopee. But there is a sufficient gaming balance right now, because in 2022, we got like a $600,000 extra payment, and I can't remember exactly what it was for. It was some new.
For them building a new casino.
Yeah, new casino came online or something. So gaming fund is it's slowly coming back.
Do you know offhand, like, what's in that Watchtower TIF? What's the fund balance approximately?
Not
Not-
off the
okay.
top of my head, no.
Just curious.
We can email it to you tomorrow if you'd like.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts?
For all the hard work.
Yes, appreciate that.
I
It's
mean,
not an easy
that's-
task.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say, having sat through, 6 of these with the mayor, this was a really nice presentation. I think that staff really took to heart a lot of the things that council has been kind of harping on, and are moving in the right direction. Like you say, we can't do it all at one time, but this is in the positive direction. Thank you.
And some of this doesn't look the best, but we are getting new services. We are getting new shiny things that we're able to say we have, and it is things that, you know, our residents have wanted. So, thank you to everyone for that as well, so.
Yeah, how long do snowplows and ambulances last? Because we used our once-in-a-lifetime inheritance.
Yeah,
We
we got lucky. We got real lucky, folks.
Yeah, but the water and sewer, I mean, how long do those things last? And, you know, we've been aggressively
Longer
than the
replacing and building
ambulance
those.
and fire
You know, we're,
Let's not even talk about the rest.
I look forward to talking about building capital asset management next year, Todd. Very much look forward to that.
yeah.
We're gonna come back probably in December or January with some ideas about roads, talk about road funding. I know that's one of our biggest challenges.
So is that for 2025?
It all depends on what the council wants to do. We haven't assumed anything in 2024 related to roads, but, you know, we'll present some options related to road funding, and if the council wants to
free.
pursue them, we could implement them.
What, you guys get calls about bad roads?
Nothing's for free, folks. Nothing gets fixed for free.
Nope.
Much longer. I mean, some of the streets that are on the schedule for 2026, 2027, they're literally crumbling.
Yep.
Laughed at me when I said 20th Street was going to be fixed in
I know.
2026.
Yeah.
It is what, I mean,
This is a procedure to prioritize for those roads. I mean, we don't have something that we can see like, hey, this is how we grade this street, or do we? Because I'm struggling to try to figure
Mike?
out how do roads get put on that.
They have a
repair
process.
list?
How do
The
they get
CIP.
moved up?
Yeah, so we do have a database for road conditions. We utilize that to make decisions on what projects get put on the CIP. There's other decisions that are used to add projects to the CIP. Other than that, the software, the database I'm talking about is called a PCI index. It's a pavement condition index, which it ranks all the streets within the city based off their pavement surface condition. It gives them a number, and it's basically fair, good, poor, and average conditions. And then we take that information and put it into our capital improvement plan and add projects accordingly for that.
Is there a way that I can get
Yeah,
overall
there
view of
is.
what that is?
And actually, the city manager, Todd Thompson, said we are looking to come to council here with a street maintenance discussion in December. And all of that information is going to be in that presentation related to the database, the pavement condition index, how we're looking at revenues for future projects. So and if you can wait till then, it will be in that presentation.
Well, I mean, I get beat up every town hall meeting. I'm pretty sure my constituents, I mean, everyone else up here, counterparts are the same way. But, I mean, in my defense, or the way I defend us in the city, is that there's a process in place.
There is.
I just need to know what that process is, and if I can visibly show it, I can probably stop getting hit so hard.
Sure.
So, I mean, as soon as you can get it to me, I can kind of digest it, and then I'll be able to, explain that a little bit better. Because every meeting, I'm getting hit all the time.
Yeah.
Did you see this road? I'm sure everyone gets that, so I'm not saying it's just First Ward, but
And
if
really-
there is an order, I just like to see kind of where some of the streets within the First Ward lies in that order, and then I can kind of let my constituents know, hey, they are being worked on.
Biggest issue we have with any part of the city is funding.
Right.
You saw a motor fuel tax, we're at 1.5 million of revenue. That's all we have for street funding, and we
That
should
include
really
the
be
local
putting
gas
in.
tax?
Local gas tax that originally started around 575,000 in revenue, and we're hoping to collect around 300-some-thousand now with the people crossing the river and getting cheaper gas in Iowa. But yeah, again, we should be putting around over $7 million into our streets, and we're lucky to get $1.5 million a year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.